Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions, pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance. All backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.
With Money podcast.
Hello and welcome to 1,000 Natural Shocks, a Bad with Money podcast. I'm your host, Gabe Dunn. And with me today, do you want to tell my audience who you are and what you do?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. My name is Maebe. Some of you might know me as Maebe Pudlo. Some of you might know me as Maebe A. Girl. I'm a trans non-binary politician, drag queen, running for California State Senate here in District 26.
For my audience who maybe hasn't heard of you, can you explain how you got into politics and why you wanted to get into politics?
I've kind of always had an interest in civil engagement, in politics, but I think for a lot of queer people, we grew up kind of seeing what a politician looks like. It doesn't always look like us. In fact, it very rarely looks like us. I love to ask this question to people, what do you think of when you think of a politician? And I feel like, unfortunately, the average person thinks a white, cisgender, heterosexual, older, wealthy, white male. I think I might have said white twice.
And that's fair.
But, this is not what our communities look like. Our communities are not represented in our government in the way that they are actually represented in our neighborhoods, in our communities, in the actual real world that we live in. So I think there has been this hesitancy for a lot of people belonging to any variety of marginalized communities who don't think that they have a place in politics. But here's the thing, it is do or die for so many communities that we actually have to be in these spaces to guarantee that we are being represented fairly, that we're even being represented at all. I am trans non-binary person. My pronouns are they, them, or she, her, anything but he, him. And I think a lot of people think of California as being this super progressive, liberal state, but at the same time, we've never had an openly trans or trans non-binary person ever elected to the California state legislature. Meanwhile, you look at all of the anti-LGBTQIA plus bills that have been introduced. This year alone, there's been over 700 bills. And when we say anti-LGBTQIA, they're mostly anti-trans bills. When you don't have trans people at the table to plea for our lives, it's incredibly unfair, it's undemocratic, and it's not representative of the people. For me, the reason I got into politics is because I think that we need more queer representation. We need people at the table defending our existences, our lives, and making sure that we are being treated fairly, equally, and equitably.
But why you? Why did you decide, let me do this?
It's kind of one of those things where if you don't see it happening, maybe it needs to be you. I started off here in politics in Los Angeles at a very local level. I ran for the Silver Lake Neighborhood Council. For those of you listening who are not aware, LA essentially has 3 levels of government. We've got 1 mayor, we've got 15 city council districts, and then we have 99 neighborhood council districts. By far, city council has the most power. In fact, I would argue that we have the most powerful city council in the entire United States based off of how many constituents each representative is representing. So LA is a city of almost 4 million people represented by 15 people. So they created the neighborhood council system as a way to further engagement and representation at the local level. So while neighborhood councils are an official part of city government, we're not a legislative body, we are an advisory body. So the intention is that you elect local representatives for your neighborhood, you put on these local community meetings, and the community has a voice in city council. Unfortunately, city council doesn't always listen to our advice, believe it or not. I saw an ad on Facebook about neighborhood council elections. I didn't even know neighborhood councils existed at the time. This was back in early 2019. And so I went to a few meetings and I actually thought this is really cool. Excited about this neighborhood, local micro government happening here. And so I decided to run. And I think every person who runs for any sort of political office the first time, I think the big fear is that come election day, you're going to see that there's one vote for you and it's the one vote that you cast yourself. And so I was beyond thrilled that after election day for neighborhood councils, I ended up being elected. And I was really excited because I was elected as a part of a progressive slate. And our board on the Silver Lake Neighborhood Council, we have 21 members, which is pretty cool. I wish most of them showed up. Sorry, a little shade. We elected 11 progressives, which essentially gave us a progressive majority, which is kind of rare for any sort of governmental body. I mean, I know it's super local, but the voices and opinions and concerns of my neighbors matter at the city level. And so that was really cool. After I won a local position, I thought, well, the people who elected me to represent them locally are the same people that vote in higher up elections. I believe that the people in my neighborhood like my representation because they've not only elected me, but they re-elected me 3 times. I'm finishing up my 4th term right now. It has been a really amazing experience, but also I'm ready to fight for my neighbors in my community on a legislative level, not just an advisory level.
What's some stuff that you're proud of from being on the neighborhood council?
So I've been a member of the executive committee for about 6 of my going on 8 years. I've been the treasurer for the neighborhood council since 2020. I got involved with our finances at the beginning of COVID. We formed an emergency funding task force. And the treasurer at the time asked me to be a part of it. And we helped to delegate our funding to go directly into the community to help, just organizations that were helping the broader community, like the Hollywood Sunset Free Clinic and Ground Game LA, and a lot of these great local grassroots organizations. That was a really cool experience. The treasurer at the time said that she was not going to be running for re-election for treasurer on our board and said she wanted to appoint me. And that was not something I ever really planned on getting into, is like the financial aspect, the budgeting aspect of governments. But she trained me and I agreed to it. And I've now been the treasurer for about 6 years. And it has been such an amazing experience because budgets are moral documents. When you are creating and crafting the budgets, you are saying this is how we should pour our money into the community. I think that city council could take a few lessons. There is no world in which I would be giving majority of our budget to police because police don't solve problems. My goal as the treasurer has always been to pour as much money directly back into the community through neighborhood purpose grants, which are available to LAUSD schools, as well as 501c3 nonprofits that benefit the entire community, and community improvement projects, things that are going to benefit all of our neighbors. And that's something I'm really proud of. I've been able to spend more than half of our budget every year since I've been treasurer, again, directly back on community. So that's something I'm proud of. I've also been able to successfully pass a few local resolutions. I was able to get our neighborhood council to pass a resolution for a ceasefire in Gaza. It wasn't just for Silver Lake. There was a big ask in there to ask city council to try to replicate this. LA is the second largest city in the US. We have political power. Unfortunately, that didn't happen on the city council level. That was something I was proud of locally. I was also able to get our neighborhood council to pass a resolution to condemn and wish for the abolition of ICE, which I thought was really amazing, especially considering the atrocities that ICE has brought to our neighborhoods here in LA. And finally, I was able to get our neighborhood council to pass a resolution to declare Silver Lake a safe haven neighborhood for all transgender individuals. And again, with an ask for city council to take further action to guarantee LA as a sanctuary for trans people seeking gender affirming healthcare. And this came in the midst of Children's Hospital LA announcing that they were no longer going to be engaging in gender affirming healthcare. Those are a few of the things that I've been proud to do at the local level. example. I'm proud of those because I was able to bring everybody in on these issues. I was able to discuss them with conviction and with pride, and also with the ability to be able to speak to people who don't necessarily agree with me. I think that's really important in politics is you are always going to encounter people that disagree with you, but being able to have a civil discussion with somebody else, even if they fundamentally oppose your existence, I think speaks to diplomacy. I'm proud to be able to speak with people that I don't agree with, and sometimes, not always, but sometimes be able to change their mind just by bringing it down to a human level. And it's like, yo, you're against trans issues. I'm a trans person. We work together every single day. Why are you against trans people? It's kind of that.
It's so interesting the having met a trans person and not having to reevaluate. What do you think the disconnect is there, and what do you think changes when they meet you?
I think the big disconnect is a lot of people get their information about trans people from the internet and from not just misinformation campaigns, but disinformation campaigns. If anybody has been on Twitter lately, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, there are so many bot accounts and accounts that are being uplifted that are just actively promoting disinformation about trans people and trying to label us as terrorists, trying to label us as freaks of nature. They're trying to dehumanize us. And so what I try to do in my interactions with people, even with people who I'm in extreme disagreement with, is try to humanize both of us, because I recognize I'm a human speaking to another human, and I hope to have that same sort of reciprocal respect, even just at the basic human level. It sort of messes with their idea of what they think a trans person is, because they see these sensationalized stories about trans people that are not necessarily representative of the broader trans community. And trans people are not a monolith. You are going to find bad actors in every single marginalized community. That does not mean that they represent their entire marginalized community or population.
Yeah, the misinformation is huge. You guys are cutting up kids. No. It's interesting to see laws made against things that aren't happening.
Exactly. And they're like, well, why would you be opposed to this? Why would you be opposed to this?
It's not real.
It's not real. You're creating this fear campaign around something that doesn't exist. And in the process, trying to just chip away from the way that people see whether it's trans people or any other marginalized community. And just it's a long-term game. It's a long game where they're trying to, over time, like rewire people's brains to feel a certain way about a certain marginalized community.
Why now California State Senate? What are you able to do differently there?
I previously ran for higher office. I ran for U.S. Congress to represent California District 28 when I first ran, now District 30. I decided to run for U.S. Congress again because the people that elected me to local office, again, would be the people to elect me to a higher office. And I was dissatisfied, and I still am dissatisfied with my congressional representation. I don't think that it fully matches what the beliefs are in this particular district. We live in the heart of Los Angeles, like deeply blue, deeply progressive. Why do we not have deeply progressive representation? If there's anywhere where we should be seeing very leftist representation, it should be LA, and it's not. And I think that it's kind of a bummer that a lot of people think of LA as being this like progressive haven. And it's interesting because there are so many actually progressive people here, but our representation is not necessarily progressive. It is in many ways center left at best. But either way, it is, our representation for the most part, corporately funded, establishment, go with the status quo, not trying to make these massive changes. When you talk to the average voter, the average, even non-voter, people that just live here, they want to see these massive changes because they are dissatisfied with how life is going for them. A lot of it has to do with affordability issues. A lot of it has to do with just being able to survive day to day. I think most people are living paycheck to paycheck. I'm living paycheck to paycheck. I've been a lifelong renter as an adult. I recognize these struggles. These are my neighbor's struggles. These are my own struggles. And so I think there's something to be said about trying to elect more working class people to our governmental positions, because working class people are not represented. And that's something that the duopoly does, where, you've got Democrats or Republicans. You're either this or that, left or right. Very few things are actually a binary, but they try to portray American politics from the macro to the micro level as being a binary, and it's not. And I'm saying this as somebody who's been a lifelong Democrat, somebody who's running as a Democrat, that it's unfortunate that any sort of criticism of the Democratic Party party is viewed as an endorsement of the right. And that's not
Yeah.
the case whatsoever. We should be criticizing our own community members and our own party members because we don't want to get into this groupthink idea of just we're automatically correct because we are not the other people, because those are the bad
Yeah.
people. It's a very us versus them mentality. Real life is so much more nuanced than that.
It's been interesting lately watching Democrats and liberals, especially in the LA mayor race.
Mm-hmm.
If you believe that you elect someone and then you can just like walk away, you need to look at their voting record, because the assumption that someone is progressive, it's been kind of mind blowing to look at the way city council votes and then to have like was it like the California Post being like, there's a bunch of socialists on city council. I was
Oh
like, girl,
God,
I
I
wish.
wish.
I wish.
I wish. It's so funny. I mean, it even like that same faction is, these were the same people that described Biden as like a socialist and a communist. And it's like,
Yeah.
in what world?
I wish. So what exactly, if people don't know like what a state senate does, what is it like, oh, I should vote for this type of person for that? Like, what is this going to affect my life?
Great question. And this is a conversation I've had a lot with my campaign manager, with a lot of volunteers, a lot of supporters or potential supporters. It's really interesting to me that voters tend to hyper focus on the very local and the very high. So they
Right.
are focusing on who's going to be president in a presidential election. In a midterm election, they're focusing on who's going to be our governor, who's going to be our US senator. And then on the local level, they're trying to figure out who's going to be our city council representative, who's going to be our mayor. And those are both very important. And in fact, in many regards, the people that you elect to the most local positions in your area are going to have the biggest impact on your day-to-day life and the day-to-day life of your friends, your family, your neighbors. The positions that are kind of in the middle often get lost in the mix, even though those are also extremely important. So the California State Legislature is broken up into the California State Assembly and the California State Senate, and it's sort of just a smaller version of US Congress, where it's broken up into two chambers. You've got the US House of Representatives, which is like our state assembly, and then you've got the US Senate, which is like our state Senate. Any sort of laws that are being introduced or reconsidered in the state of California go directly through the state legislature, and it can start in either chamber. You can introduce a bill in the state assembly or in the state Senate. If it passes, it goes to the other house. If it passes both houses, it goes to the governor's desk. This is incredibly important when we are living in, the most populous state in the United States, when we are, as a state, the fourth largest economy in the world behind the United States. These are very big and important positions. For me, what has been a little bit frustrating about the California State Legislature is we do actually have a supermajority of Democrats, which begs the question to both voters and people within that system: why are we not continuously passing more and more progressive laws that are helping all Californians? And so for me, one of the biggest issues, if not the biggest issue I'm running on, is universal health care. I do not understand why the wealthiest state in the wealthiest nation in the history of humanity cannot afford to give everybody health care. And the thing is, we actually can afford to give everybody health care, but there are so many political roadblocks, corporate lobbyists, Citizens United, etc. Just about a month ago, the states ended up killing a bill. It was AB 1900, which is CalCare, which would be universal health care for all Californians. This is, I think, the third or fourth time it's been introduced in the past several election cycles, or legislative cycles, rather. It ended up dying in committee. And I want people to name names. Like, who is in here actually preventing this from moving on, when more than half, I think around 2/3 of Californians want to see a radical change to our healthcare system? Really, as it stands, the status quo is not serving the needs or the wants or the desires of the people who are electing them. I'm a candidate who I am proud to be corporate free, because that my loyalty lies within the people and not the corporations who are funding my campaign, because they're not funding my campaign. They're funding the campaigns of everybody. I shouldn't say everybody. That's a little bit of an exaggeration,
A
but
lot of people.
a lot of people are funded by some sort of corporate PAC money, whether it is fossil fuel money or real estate money or big pharma money or APAC money. All of this influences the way that our legislators legislate. I wish that more people sort of recognize that if you follow the money, you'll probably find who most aligns with your values.
So what was the decision initially to run in drag?
So I guess it wasn't really like a decision. It was kind of like I kind of just did it. I mean, drag for me is really interesting because it's not necessarily separate from who I am. I feel like drag in many ways is a part of my gender identity. I think it helps me to express a part of my gender identity that is maybe not expressed on the day to day. I think that it's also really important to have very visibly queer people running for office in the face of so many anti-LGBTQIA plus initiatives. And so I think it's really important that we're not hiding, that we're not cowering, that we're not trying to assimilate to cis heteronormative culture. I think it's very important to be very loud and proud and queer on the campaign trail to show that I'm not afraid to stand up for my community. I am my community. And I think that's incredibly important to do. And like you're never gonna catch me in like a suit and tie. That's not that's not who I am. So I think that drag is a really amazing tool to be able to campaign, especially as somebody who is a local performer. And again, as a local performer, I'm talking to local audiences who are local voters. It has in many ways also trained me to be a politician, if you will, being able to speak to strangers, being able to get on the microphone and speak to a room full of people that I don't necessarily know and be able to speak about my convictions. So it's been both a good tool in terms of visibility, but also a good tool in terms of learning how to be a public speaker and learning how to engage with the public.
That's so interesting. Yes. You have to be, at least when you're dressed, an extrovert.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't go to all I it's funny because probably the first 2 or 3 years I was on the neighborhood council, I went to every single meeting, fully done up, fully there in drag, and my schedule has changed and I just don't really have time to get ready to go to my meetings. But it doesn't matter because I'm still the same person in or out of drag, but I feel like drag gives you this sort of armor and this sort of visibility that you don't otherwise receive.
I can't do everything around here. Deadlines are slipping. I can't just do it all on my own. I need to hire someone. I needed an editor. And I was scrounging. How am I going to find an editor? It was a chaotic mess over here. This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. I have personally used Indeed for years. I actually have been hired for 2 jobs off of Indeed. I was able to match my skills with jobs in my area. The only 2 times that I have been hired without any sort of in with the company was through Indeed. So I was pretty stoked to find the people I needed for this podcast and also to know that I could do that on a place where I have been hired. And if you're looking to hire someone, let's say you're the job looking to hire me, you can use Indeed sponsored jobs as a boost whenever you need to find quality talent. In the minute that I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. That's cuckoo bananas. And so speaking as someone who has been on both sides of the hiring spectrum, Indeed has helped me in real life spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs.
Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions, pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance, all backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.
Let's talk about Fox News's obsession with you.
Please.
How did the right wing get a hold of this information, and what was that first time like?
I've fallen victim to Fox News several times over my political career, if you will, which also, I'm not a career politician. I just happen to be in politics. This particular election cycle, I think it started with like, I made a comment on a Libs for TikTok Twitter post, probably something having to do with like trans people or gay people or whatnot. And they ended up sharing my campaign video. And then Fox News picked up on it and they did this whole segment on my campaign without even consulting me to say like, oh, do you have anything to say about this? Do you have
Mm-hmm.
can you clarify this? What do you think about this? It was just, no, we're taking your video, we're breaking it apart, and we're presenting it as news. Obviously, with this being Fox News National, they had nothing nice to say. It was all very hate-filled. But for me, they say no publicity is bad publicity. I view this as an anti-endorsement endorsement. If Fox News is that scared of me coming into a position of power, I must be doing something right, or left, far left, if you will. And then most recently, this happened a second time in this campaign. I ended up being on Fox 11 Local. They've been interviewing a number of local candidates. I agreed to go and do an in-studio filming, and then the very next day, I got a text message from Fox News National saying, "Do we have permission to use your campaign video in a larger segment?" I went into this fully knowing they're not going to have anything nice to say to me, but let's do it because I think that people need to. I think people need to see how Fox News and some of these right-wing agencies horribly treat members of the queer community. And the thing is, they didn't even really come after any of my policies. They came after me as a human being, being an openly trans non-binary person.
Mm-hmm.
Really messed up. Laura Ingraham loves to talk about me on her show, but she has not invited me to be on her show. And the thing is, I would accept an invitation because I feel firm in my convictions as a human being and as myself. The things that I believe in, I will defend them to the very ends of the earth. But give me the opportunity to actually defend them and not just speak about me in a closed-ended meeting, which is just you putting this video up on the internet saying this is how it is, and that's it.
I mean, I was like, you can't pay for that kind of publicity.
Hello.
On a national level, okay. The name recognition, great.
Yeah, and which is why I am actually, I shouldn't say that's the only reason. I think a big part of the reason is I've been a good local representative and I've been running for higher office for a few years now that I have great name recognition in my district, which really does play a role in how elections are won. Even just the positioning of our names on the ballot, I just so happen to be listed first on the ballot. So to be listed first on the ballot and, have high name recognition is a good opportunity to actually win this seat. But I don't want to win by luck. I want people to vote for me because they agree with the policies that I'm bringing forth. I say this all the time. I don't want people to vote for me just because I'm a trans person, just because I'm a drag performer, just because I'm a part of the community. I want people to vote for me because they agree with the policies that I want to bring, which are all rooted in human rights and social justice and economic equity. Universal health care is not just a trans issue. It's an everybody issue. Housing for all is not just a trans issue. It's an everybody issue. Free state college. All of these ideas are really going to promote economic equity. And that's something that the higher ups don't really want because you got to beat people down. You got to make sure people are working hard enough and are just enough on the edge where they are just barely getting by, that they don't have time to really stop and sit back and think, our government could be doing more for us. We pay all this money in taxes. We do all of this. And yet, what are we getting in return? Nothing. Crumbs. And we are supposed to be happy with it just because it's not Trump.
The universal healthcare in California, in your ideal world, how would that work?
So basically, what this would do is it would eliminate the middleman, which is for-profit insurers. For-profit insurers are really the downfall of so many great socialist ideas that would benefit everybody. Everybody would be paying less over time if we had universal health care, if this was just a public benefit. In the same way that roads are public benefits, in the same way that our fire departments are public benefits, in the same way our libraries are public benefits. These are things that benefit everybody. Instead, it's really capitalism that is inserted into every single part of politics to try to just suck every little nickel and dime out of the consumer. And
Hmm.
this is why we're seeing the wealth gap just get broader and broader and wider and wider. The rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. When was the last time you met a middle class person? And a lot of it has to do with insurance companies and capitalism and lobbyists and the way that they are able to influence elections. I mean, even in my election right now for state senate, I'm running against a candidate. Her name's Sarah Hernandez. I'll name names. What bothers me about her campaign and her specifically is that she is cosplaying a lot of progressive politics and progressive language and even in progressive spaces. But at the same time, she'll turn around and so she's really good at telling each group of people what they want to hear. So when you have her speaking to a progressive group and they love her, and then you have her speaking towards a pro police group saying that she's a pro police candidate, those are conflicts. Can't have it both ways. When you are accepting donations from a super corporate PAC that is backed by people who oppose public unions, and yet you're also getting the endorsements of labor unions, it just, again, there's this conflict here. She's telling each and every person exactly what they want to hear. But again, all you really have to do is take a look at where her campaign is being funded by. She has received hundreds of thousands of dollars from a super PAC called Grow California, which was co-founded by Tim Draper, who's like a crypto billionaire. You really think a crypto billionaire wants people to have universal health care, universal housing, universal education? She's endorsed by I shouldn't say endorsed, that might be incorrect, but she's received a lot of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars from a PAC that is mostly funded by the Apartment Association of California, the California Association of Realtors. Do you think those people want people to have housing for
Housing for
all?
all, yeah.
All you really have to do is look at the money and think about who do her donors want her to support. And when she is receiving tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars from any given organization, that is where her loyalty is going to lie, because they're the ones that are allowing her to put her message out there and to be able to send out 10 flyers a day to every household. I mean, if you take a look at the trash can in my apartment building's mail lobby, it's just filled with flyers. Most of them are from Sarah Hernandez. I took a look at one of the mailers that came directly from her campaign. So, like, her campaign actually paid for it. It said that Sarah is the only progressive candidate running a grassroots campaign powered by the community.
Yeah.
I was flabbergasted, because somebody's going to read that and they're going to believe it while not knowing that she is funded by all of these corporate PACs and has actually received like APAC money. Like, why is there APAC money in a state Senate race? And I think it especially bothered me because recently online, my campaign manager sent me a post of somebody was like, oh, we're really going to vote for this one person. And my campaign manager was like, no, we should vote for this person, me. They responded saying, oh, yeah, I like Maebe's beliefs, but Sarah has the same exact beliefs. And I'm like, no, 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 no. She does not actually believe or will fight for, again, these economic equity policies that will benefit all of us, like universal health care, housing for all, free state college. She says it herself. If you look at the campaign materials, they use this language. It's tricky for people to really understand. She'll use expressions like expand healthcare. Okay, that sounds good on paper, but expand access to healthcare. I have access to healthcare. I can walk to the hospital 2 blocks from
Right.
here. It just depends on whether or not I have the health insurance to be able to pay for that. They're just also vague that
Yeah.
she wants you to interpret them in the way that you want to interpret them. But if you actually, again, take a look into her policy, and this is, again, matched by who she's receiving funding by, what you actually want is not what you're actually going to get with this candidate.
Yeah, that's been really wild. I've been trying to figure out, did these candidates go in and then get corrupted, or what? Like, I'm always like, what happened? I mean, it's been wild watching the DSA members, Soto Martinez and Hernandez and Gerardo on city council in Los Angeles. They just endorsed Karen Bass, who
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
center left at best.
And as we all know, Gerardo, Hernandez, Soto Martinez, and Rahman have been the progressive voter bloc for LA City Council. And not naming any of them as super leftist, but if you had to say who's the progressive voter bloc, it is them. And so I also thought that was really interesting. what do you think is the reasoning behind that?
I think they're kind of mad at Nithya because she didn't give them any heads up that she was running for mayor. So they looked kind of dumb in the newspaper. The suspicion is if Bass gets reelected and they didn't endorse her, they're going to have real problems with her.
Yep.
But if
Yep.
Nithya gets elected, it's like, well, she'll forgive us. We'll all go back to being happy DSA family.
Yeah. And honestly, that's the part of politics I don't like. Like that's the politics of politics.
Infuriating.
It's not supporting who actually aligns with your values. It's supporting, well, how am I going to be able to do A, B, or C if I don't support or back this person? And it's the exact kind of thinking that has led us to where we are at right now on, again, the micro level and the macro level. The Democratic Party as a whole has shifted slowly but surely to the right. But when you compare how far the right has gone, it looks like it's centrist, but it's actually not. It's right wing conservative thinking, again, with a rainbow painted on it.
Yeah.
That's the part of politics that I really don't like and I don't engage in because you said this earlier, a politician is only as good as their voting record. And I stand behind my voting record, even just on the local neighborhood council for the past going on 8 years. I stand behind every vote because every vote I made had the community and their best interests in mind. It wasn't, well, how am I going to get this passed? And how am I going to be able to advance in my career? And how am I going to be able to take a step up? And I don't know. I just think we need more people in politics who are willing to come in and possibly be a one-term candidate because they go in and they actually speak their mind, which is their mind being what their constituents actually want to see. Their constituents don't want to see tax cuts for the rich. They want to see local tax cuts. They want to see policies that are going to make their lives easier, make their lives more affordable. And it just feels like we're constantly catering to the wealthy, the elite, the most powerful, because somehow we think it's going to benefit us in the future. And I think we've all seen that is sorely incorrect.
This is so infuriating to me. As an example, let's say the mayor's race. I don't understand, and perhaps the last year that I've been deeply involved in politics in LA, I've never felt more autistic in my life because I don't understand why people aren't doing these things that seem so obvious to me. If you really believe the values of the DSA or you really believe the values that you've ran on and that mostly Hernandez and Soto Martinez vote on, it's like, oh, well, Ray Wong who's like the very progressive candidate, has no chance of winning. Well, you created those conditions.
Thank you. You created those conditions.
Why wouldn't all four of you who are the DSA bloc throw your weight behind Ray, push Ray, and then she would have a chance because you all decided to take a risk that doesn't become a risk when you all do this.
Exactly.
I just don't understand. I'm like, we're in this dire moment. Why aren't the four of you on stage with Ray pushing Ray if you really believe
exactly
in the things?
And that would give Ray the conditions to win. And I really actually resent that people are calling for Ray to drop out when Ray was the initial person in the race.
Why is it always, well, it's like you have to do this, you have to vote for the lesser of two evils. Why is it that I'm asked as the leftist to just swallow my poison pill and vote? Why don't you fucking do that?
Absolutely. And can we also talk a little bit about DSA LA? Because
please, okay, go.
I have a little bit of a resentment, a little bit of a chip on my shoulder because DSA LA selected me as their candidate of choice in 2020 and in 2022. Both times I was challenging a very well-known, very wealthy establishment Democrat. So I appreciated that I had their support in those two races. I actually ended up moving to the general election in 2022 against Adam Schiff, one of the most, if not the most well-funded Democrats that particular election cycle. I'm going up against tens of millions of dollars, not to mention the just nationwide support and media presence that he had because of his involvement with the Trump impeachment and the Mueller report. And when it comes down to it, Adam Schiff was another one of those Democrats who was portrayed as being as a progressive, but actually is just really just your run-of-the-mill blue dog Democrats, war hawk, who voted for every single war initiative since the beginning of the 2000s. So anyways, I was really excited to receive the DSALA, and not endorsement, but recommendation 2020 and 2022. I was not planning on running for US Congress a third time, but when Adam Schiff decided to not seek re-election and to try to run for US Senate, I said, well, I have to try this one more time. I was just in the general election, did fairly well compared to what I was up against. Let me try this again. And DSA ended up giving the recommendation to Laura Friedman, who I agree with socially in many regards. We're similar on some social issues. I think one of our biggest differences is that she's a Zionist Jew and I'm an anti-Zionist Jew. And I was really, really disappointed that DSA ended up giving her the recommendation. And they framed it as, well, we just don't want, because there were a number of other middle of the road politicians running. They were basically framing it as a harm reduction of votes, where maybe actually represents everything that we stand for, but we think this person has a better chance. Well, they do have a better chance when you say they have a better chance. This person would have a better chance if you say this person has a better chance and you back this person. Fast forward to 2026 election. I'm now running for California State Senate. Again, it's an open seat. I'm only running for this seat because the representative in this seat is seeking another position. I know that we have to keep this district progressive, and I want to make it even more progressive because I know this district is more progressive. And so they ended up giving the recommendation to one of my opponents. I actually do like the person that they gave the recommendation to. Our campaigns are friendly, but really what it came down to was money. They noted how I had only raised about $53,000. But mind you, this is $53,000 of grassroots, corporate-free money. I have over 2,000 donors, but they're donating $23 a piece, not $5,000 a piece. The person they ended up giving the recommendation to really didn't raise that much more than me. She raised a little more than $100,000. But when you compare it to the $1.25 million that have been raised in independent expenditures by Sarah Hernandez, it's still pennies on both sides. Pennies for me, pennies for Sarah Rascone, who is who DSA ended up recommending. And again, our campaigns are friendly. I like Sarah Rascone. I would say like the big difference between Sarah Rascone and I is that I have been locally elected representative for 8 years. So I do have experience and know what it's like to be in a governmental setting. I know that she has worked in governmental offices. Anyways, I'm digressing a bit. The point I'm trying to make is that I was really disappointed that DSA flat out says in their description of me, I should be the candidate, but because this person has raised $50,000 more than me, they're going to give the recommendation to her. And it just doubles down on this idea that we need money in politics when we actually don't. We should have publicly funded elections. We should be trying to overturn Citizens United to get all of this big corporate funding out. Gabe, can I actually read you the description that DSA said of my campaign in their voter guide?
Please.
Community organizer, Silver Lake Neighborhood Council member, and perennial leftist candidate Maebe Pudlo represents perhaps the most progressive platform in both this race and throughout this primary election cycle statewide. Pudlo has run for Congress 3 times on a platform of Medicare for all, a Green New Deal, abortion rights, federally backed housing vouchers for unhoused individuals, and education for all, and all that good stuff. She's running on the same platform for state senate, but has only raised $53,000. So basically, they said, I am running on the most progressive platform in this race, the most progressive platform in this state, but because I've only raised $53,000, it's more at this point, by the way.
Right.
That this is why they can't back me. It bothers me about this idea that you need money to win when you actually don't. Our campaigns, we have done phenomenally well on very, very little funding, but that's because we're not squandering our money. We're not spending $100,000 here for a mailer, $100,000 there for a mailer. We're actually doing the ground game work. We are knocking on doors, leaving door hangers, speaking with voters. We've literally put out like 3 print ads. One of them is a postcard that says abolish ICE, and we have our supporters write about the candidates. One of them is a door hanger in both English and Spanish that is a layout of our policy views. And one of them is a yard sign. Meanwhile, going back to the beginning of the convo, I wish I could show you what the trash can in my apartment building's mailroom looks like right now. It's all these frickin' mailers from people claiming to be environmentalists.
Yeah, I know. Here's the thing with DSA. I went to a candidate forum and it was people that were seeking the DSA endorsement. They go up and speak and people can get in line and ask questions. I noticed for a few candidates, there were questions in the line that were plants. Like there was a question for a candidate that I enjoy, Ada Shuri. The questions were like, why are you terrible? They were so planted. It was crazy. And they would be like, 5 years ago, you commented this. Like it was crazy. And then they would get up for Marissa Roy and they'd be like, why are you so the best? Are you really too good to be like, just the questions were also so planted in this way. I was speaking to a friend or someone, I was speaking to someone I know there, and he was like, how are you liking the meeting? And I was like, it sucks. And he was like, why does it suck? And I was like, well, it seems like you guys are just going to endorse your friends. You're not listening. And he was like, well, no. I mean, we just have, we just have prior experiences with some of the candidates that, allow us to know a bit about how they would govern or whatever. And I was like, yeah, you're friends. What did I say? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
that's what you just described.
And it's frustrating.
It was really weird.
I want to be clear, like, I'm not shitting on DSALA. There's a lot of great members. There's a lot of people who I fully align with. And I think that's why I was disappointed to not receive their recommendation, because on paper, we have these identical values. And then in practice, it's like, oh, you're just going for the person with more money? Like, that
Yeah.
actually is not with my values. And that's not every race. I'm just talking about my particular state Senate race for District 26. I mean, I agree with a lot of the DSA recommendations for the other races. It was one of those things that, could have been, it's not going to break our campaign, but it could have really made our campaign.
That's the thing. I think about that with ICE, the ICE situation too, is that way in the beginning, and again, I'm naive and white, maybe, I don't know. But in the beginning, I thought, well, all the candidates will band together because they don't like this, let's say, of city council. And maybe they'll come outside and stand together in front of the Metropolitan Detention Center. Or maybe all of these elected Democrats in the state, they'll come down and they'll stand in front of the detention center and they'll say, no more, we're all in this together again, blah blah blah. I thought maybe Karen Bass would come down and do some, I don't know. I had these ideas of like bipartisanship and working together and all these people like backing the most progressive people because we're in an emergency, blah blah blah, the progressive candidate. None of that happened. None of that happened.
None of that happened.
In the very beginning of going to city council, I felt crazy because I was like, why aren't all of you guys banding together and
Out there on the front
talking
lines,
like,
on the
or
front
why aren't
lines.
you even talking about it? Like all the time. I feel like if I was a politician, I would, and this is not recommended, but I would like be like someone in city council would be like, I want to acknowledge. They just are like do these weird acknowledgments and weird little like thingamabobs. Like it's
Yep.
Reese's Pieces Day, blah blah blah. I wanted to stand in the middle and be like, and like scream and be like, there's a detention center 5 feet away. Like I
Yep.
just felt insane.
Yep. It's like these acknowledgments. Oh, those bother me too. Like, even like a land acknowledgement. Yes, the idea of it is great, but unless you're doing anything to actively work towards making up for what has happened, like, it feels very in vain. I too wonder why we don't see more of our politicians on the front lines when it's not necessarily for a photo op. I actually kind of have like a similar, like, I have a counter story to that. So on June 5th last year, 2025, I was at City Hall. I was receiving an award I was the CD13 Pride honoree for 2025. And I was really excited about that. I thought that was so cool. I was excited to, speak at City Hall to the public about queer issues. And it was a wonderful, joyous experience. I went in full drag. I was wearing this beautiful lavender gown. I had these sparkly heels, this like beautiful brown wig. It was a great event. And so, anyways, as soon as we leave, I was with my campaign manager and I saw that I had a couple of messages on social media saying, yo, there's an ICE raid happening right now in the Pinata district downtown. Can you go over if you're available? And it just so happened that we were already downtown. We had the free time. So let's go check it out and make sure our neighbors are safe. And it was one of the most horrific things, like, to actually witness in real life the way just the militarization of ICE and of these federal departments just rolling down the street in what I could only essentially describe as tanks with these giant ass guns. This is somehow supposed to make our communities more safe and to make us feel a sense of safety. And, being there, I could see this was making everybody feel unsafe. And so there was a standoff for a couple of hours. I ended up getting tear gassed. I'm running away in my sparkly heels. Even though that was a bad experience, I felt like I needed to be there to show up for my community and use the privilege that I have to stand between ICE and my neighbors that are being taken away. I wish that we saw more of that from our governmental officials who are trying so hard to tell the community that they are against ICE, but don't actually put themselves between ICE and the community. Going back to Sarah Hernandez, my opponent, one of the campaign gimmicks that she has done this election cycle is she has sent out packages, like not just like a letter, but a package. And you open it up and it's a flyer for her campaign. She's smiling and holding a whistle. And she's like, here's a whistle for you. Make sure to blow your ice whistle if ice comes to your communities. And like also included a Sarah Hernandez for state senate branded ice whistle. And
Are
I'm
you
like,
fucking
it's
serious?
so fucking tacky and just like completely missing the point of community organizing. I was in shock. I didn't think that somebody could be that tacky. And here we are.
Ugh. I just want to like end and reiterate the conclusion, that you and I came to, which is we create the conditions that allow truly progressive candidates to flounder. The idea that an example, Ray Wong for LA mayor or you would not benefit from people that truly hold progressive values, that are in a position of power, or are in a position to endorse. You don't have to do the lesser of two evils. If you all work together or in what you believe in, why not? I'm not an expert on their careers and what that would do or whatever, but so much of me this last year has been like, who cares about your career?
Yeah.
That these groups could make a difference and could sway with their recommendations or endorsements as needed. If Ramon didn't run and you all went behind Ray, if the DSA recommended the person they actually thought would be the best candidate, what is the point of these then if it's not to make real change or bring power to a campaign that maybe had no power? It's always like, why don't we have our Mamdani? He had to grow from very small. It's wild.
And people also forget that he was a member of the New York State Legislature before he became mayor of New York City. And that's also why I get so bothered when people are like, oh, he just came out of nowhere and you elected him. Why not elect Spencer Pratt? You're completely missing the fact that Mamdani was an elected member of the New York State Legislature, which that's experience. And I'm not saying that every candidate needs to go in with experience, but you need to go in with some sort of transferable experience, whether it be in mutual aid or community organizing or emergency response. You can't just say, oh, I don't like it, so I'm going to be better because that's bad and I'll be good. You have to present some sort of game plan and some sort of policy ideas for what you want to bring to be able to change the conditions within our communities. And the way that we get elected, like you said, is by having progressive organizations and communities back the candidates that actually align with their values.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Is there anything that you want to leave people with?
Yeah, just that, I'm running for State Senate, District 26. I think I've been pretty clear throughout, but again, I'm running on a platform that is based in human rights, social justice, and economic equity. I'm fighting to bring universal health care, housing for all, and free state college to all Californians, regardless of gender identity and regardless of immigration status. I'm here to keep federal agents out of California and make sure that we, the people, our communities, keep our communities safe. The election's coming up on June 2nd. The voting period is open right now, so I hope that folks will consider voting for me. If you live in District 26, which includes everything between Central Hollywood to East LA, going west to east, and then north to Eagle Rock and Highland Park, south down to K-Town. It's a big district. It's most of Central LA, so I hope that I have the support of the listeners, and I want to make everybody proud.
Well, thank you so much. And yes, everyone, you will have a week of voting, so get into it.
Get into it. Thanks, Gabe. I love chatting with you.
Of course. Thank you for listening to 1,000 Natural Shocks, a Bad with Money podcast. This is a noted bisexual production, edited by Allie Mims. Logo art by Dakota Becker. If you like the show, please consider subscribing to the Substack, 1000naturalshocks.substack.com. The Substack has episodes of this show ad-free and also videos and also my original writing. It would mean so much to me if you would subscribe, even as a free subscriber. But a paid subscriber really allows me to keep doing this work, and I can't do it without you guys. Thank you so much. Okay, love you. Bye.
Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions, pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance, all backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.